Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Great to see everyone this morning. So could you go right. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Great to see you. Full house this morning. I wanted to let you know that if we roll back our time, pre-COVID, we would gather here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday at 11 o'clock to do sitting meditation. And so we're going to start that this week. So if you care to, you're welcome to join us at 11 o'clock, and we will sit for 45 minutes from 11 to 11:45. And then 11:45 we'll ring the bell. Give us a chance to get up and take care of whatever needs we have, and then come back for Dharma. Okay, any questions? Right now, it looks like we're going to stay here in the Bodhi Hall for those of you in person, partly because it's a little warmer in here, but also because it seems the volume for our internet is a little better also. So just know that if the sign is on the door of the Dharma, this is yes.
Is that Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, or Sundays only?
Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday.
Thank you.
Incense burning, all space is filled with the fragrance. All Buddhas smell it from afar. Auspicious clouds gather everywhere. With utmost sincerity, all is in thee. We pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. Pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas. Pay homage and offer clouds of incense to the Bodhisattvas and the Mahasattvas.
You know, there's some things that I never teach, thinking that people will be with me always. For instance, ways to honor your teacher. I never teach it because I think that honor should naturally arise. Respect should naturally arise. If there is something that is offered that increases the good fortune and the understanding in your life. But the problem comes in then when somebody does leave and they go someplace else. Then what? You didn't have any training? Didn't anybody even teach you how to respect the Dharma Hall, how to respect the teacher? And I mean, And they say, oh, no, well, my teacher didn't teach me that. So thankfully, we have suchness here because suchness went through such an intense training. And sometimes it seems a little bit odd when she shares things with us, and we think like that's just the way they do it. But it's not that. You know, like when you visit a person's home, you should observe how they move around in their home, and you should emulate that just out of respect for being a guest in their house. And when someone comes to your home and they are just doing whatever they want to do, however they want to do, rude or just in an unconscious way, you think, they ain't got no home training. So it's helpful sometimes that we understand how other people do things and why they do those things. You know, it just helps us to be well-mannered when we're out visiting somewhere else. So there are rules regarding like when the teacher enters, when you go other places, they all stand in honor of not the teacher. Yes, I could say the person because it trickles down, but really the Dharma that will go forth from the teacher. So it really comes down to how much we honor, respect, love, cherish the Dharma. The Buddha said when he was leaving, and they were like, well, wait, you didn't appoint a leader. He said, when did I even say I was your leader? He said, let the Dharma be your teacher. And so I want to bring this up because we are going to learn how, when we go into some other place, how one should, how others have been trained to respect the holy places. And this is important. It's not so important in the beginning because when a person comes in, they're suffering so immensely. But after some time, we begin to understand why we're suffering, and that while we cannot control everything outside of ourselves and make it like we want, we can control what's going on inside of us. And that's what's so wonderful about the Dharma. When I was first on the spiritual journey in this life, I learned to take refuge also. But I took refuge in the completed work of another. And that's like a child or a baby who is protected, who's nurtured, nourished by their parents. Parents provide food, clothing, shelter, housing, trains them up in how they should think, observes to point them in directions in which they should go, looks out for them, all of those things. And that's okay, and that has its place. You can see what happens when that kind of nurturing is absent. We see that when we have children having children, when we have parents who are absent from the home, or who are caught up in drugs, or who work around the clock. I'm not saying we don't need to work. I'm just saying the absence of their presence in the home creates so many obstacles for the children. But there comes a time when the child begins to grow up. And they begin to look at things, and they listen to what you say, but they also watch what you do. And sometimes our words and our actions, frankly, they just don't line up. When they don't line up, it creates a conundrum for the child. Because you're saying, do this, but you do that. And then the child begins to think, well, I have a mind. Even I can look and see that this is not good, or I have a mind, and I prefer to do this rather than that. And that's when they start reaching that stage, well, you can't tell me what to do. That's also about the time, it's time for them to get their own. Time for them to maybe find out what it really takes to keep a roof over your head, buy your clothes and buy your food. It's time to find out that you think you're so smart. In 16 years, you've learned all there is to know about life, and you won't even listen and try to understand another point of view because I've been around a long time. And many times they cannot, because it's getting towards that time, that they have to learn for themselves. They have to learn to take care of themselves. They have to learn to do for themselves. They can't run and hide behind mommy's skirt or daddy's strong arm. They have to have their own, they have to have confidence in their own ability. So they set out on that journey. And of course, when they fall, there's a parent there to encourage them, but not to fix it for them. And in that way, they learn to grow strong. The parent who loves their child will tell them the truth, even when it hurts. And this spiritual journey is a lot like that. Coming into the knowledge of the Dharma, an introduction to the Dharma. I came by way of another spiritual tradition, actually not just one, because I felt like I hit a glass ceiling with one. I mean, because I actually believed it, I embraced it. And in that particular tradition, the one whose tradition it was would say things like, the things I do, you do greater things than this. The one who said, the things that I see and I understand, you will also see and understand for yourself at my level. You don't have to hang on my coattail your whole life, because what I have is mine. And you have to get your own. So he said, do as I do, and you'll be as I am. But it was packaged in a certain way that it left him as the only one. I love Vajragata, because he asked the Buddha early on, he said, let me just ask you one question. And I have no doubt in your great capacity, your wisdom, your understanding, your accomplishment, and your power. I said, but are you the only one? And the Buddha said, no. And maybe this is just a big number, or maybe the numbers rolled out that way at that time in that place, because the Buddha went all around his territory where you could go on foot. He said, no, I have 500 males lay, 500 female lay, 500 monastic male, 500 monastic female, who've all entered into accomplishment. Not a theoretical accomplishment, but an actual accomplishment. And their capacities at handling life, at dealing with others, at being able to surmount adversity And that even being able to change conditions is recorded throughout the census. But yet, we think that that's not possible or attainable for us today. That's a dead religion. Anybody who practices the Dharma in that way is not practicing the true Dharma, but the counterfeit. So when I left the tradition I was in before, I'll just say I left the church because I myself had had certain experiences. And I'm like, I believe what he said, that we could come up to the fullness of the measure of his stature in virtue, in wisdom, and with abilities. He said, believe my words or just believe what you see in my actions. And his particular ministry was a healing ministry. He said, the lame walk, the blind see. When there was something that was needed and he didn't have money, send Peter off, go fishing. The first fish you pull out in his mouth will be a corn. You swallow the corn and you take that and go for it, whatever we know. The many ways by which capacities were met. But just to be able to walk through life and do their job, being a witness, bearing witness to the magnificent power of the Dharma, of the path, of the way, which is what he called it, and also what Sakyamuni called his revelation in the world. It was based on these same things, based on virtue. The Buddha would, Jesus would go off to meditate. I had a Bible that was printed in 1940, I think it was, a family heirloom Bible. And it would say he would go off to meditate. Now, later editions changed that word meditate to pray. Now they all say he would go off to pray. But at one I had that was early. He would go off. And that was just to separate himself so that he could arouse within himself in this human incarnation the capacity to hold the world in his arms. A true bodhisattva. A bodhisattva has not only compassion for the world, they have compassion and love. And no matter where I went in that tradition, we were all groveling all the time at the altar, looking for a blessing, needing a miracle, something like that. And I said one day when I was praying, I said, Lord, why is it that we always looking for a miracle? I'm always looking for a miracle. How come I can't develop the wisdom to keep myself from harm? I'm always wanting to help other people, and yet I knew all the time. I said, something is missing in the information I have. Something is missing. And then I've told that story, so I'm not gonna tell it today, about the vision I had and the direction that I got. And I took that. And that was in 1985. I remember that more than I remember any other event in my life. And it would have had to be that memorable for me to make the decisions that I had to make. Because it was a true stripping away of everything that I held dear in the way I held it, in the way I understood. And it has carried me all these years, even to recall that event. And the first thing I did was, well, actually, I was a Taoist at that time, and I was in China, and my master said, Taoism is not for you, Buddhism is for you. I'm like, mm-mm, mm-mm. I don't know that much about it, but I know that it's not something that I want. He said, no, Buddhism is for you. And he took me to a Chinese temple. It had been given knowledge or language. In some places, you know, people of different religions, they get along. It's maybe not where we are. Actually, in some places, communities that live together get along, maybe not so much where we are. So we should, that's the first training. Nothing else really matters. Because everything that comes after that hinges on our capacity to love our brothers and sisters as much, if not more, than we love ourselves. That's the first. We have to conquer within ourselves. Is our self-cherishing and so forth. I mean, that's why they come together, to live together as one. We come together for those who don't live together, but for fellowship together, to form a forge, a bond around the philosophy of life they hold. It gives meaning to everything else that they do in life. It's not a place for us to, like just get our feel good on. It's not a place. Someone came to my house, they're leaving this part of the country, and they wanted to come and say goodbye to me in front of me. And it was really wonderful to see them and see them all. We've had a long history. They belong to a tradition where they all like to get together and share their ideas about the nature of the universe, about everything. Everybody has an opinion and they get together and share it. That's not what this is. So for a while, he came here. We've never lost friendship. But for a while, he came here and he thought we should do the same thing. I'm like, no, if that's what you like, you go back over there and you do that. Sister, if you have difficulty sitting and you need to stand and sit, I understand that. So no worries. Try to stay focused. So he came to say goodbye, day before yesterday, he and his wife. And our conversation started off like it always does, because they be like fully cordial. And as soon as that cordiality is established, they like go right in, because they're the smartest people on earth. And they want to tell you, how you should think, but they think that's a collaborative conversation. And bless his heart, he started that in my house. It was not good. And so I just stopped it, that's all. I just stopped it. And he said, see, we are the what they are. And we believe, I said, well, that rather than having any dogma like you all do, that, he went into his diatribe for about 30 seconds. I'm gonna cut you off, if you don't mind. And then I just simply said, I pointed out to him that was his dogma. And we can each share what ours is, if that's what we come together to do. That's not, and the reason we had this conversation is I think he wanted to end something that started. It shows you how long people hold on to something. That started like about maybe 4 years ago, because he wanted to take over Prime People's Dharma talk one day. You know how kind Prime people is. He will let you talk and let you talk until I stood up and I said, they didn't come here to hear what you did today. So what I'd like for you to do is sit down and be quiet for the rest of the Dharma talk. And if you want to have a conversation with Prime people afterwards and share with them anything you want to share, by way of discussion, you can feel free to do it. And I think you've been upset with me for a long time because of that. But I'm going somewhere with this conversation. And I'm talking about our natural habituated, I'll say habituated, maybe not natural, but our habituated survival instinct. We all have it. It's that part of us that says, this is me, this is who I am, that's based on the experiences that we have in life or the things that we make up in our mind, might not actually be happening. But yet there it is in the mind. And it forms our outer perceptions of how the world is, what's happening right now, and how much of a threat it poses. And so in a way, it's like a bit of the fear of death, actually, when someone tries to change the way you see or understand or think about something. It's actually bringing a death to you as you know yourself. So there's a natural resistance to it. We use the word that trying to change, but maybe it's not about trying to change me, but me dying to myself in the way that I know myself. And even when we're not good, we know we're not doing something wholesome or thinking in certain ways that are wholesome, yet and still we cleave to it. Or at least we try to do better. But if you ask me to do better, then I'm up in arms. Because it's bringing death to me in a way that I know myself. Now, most of us don't recognize it as a fear of death because we think we're going to live forever, or at least so it's not imminent. It's no time soon. So we're not living our lives as if it's going to happen tomorrow. If I knew that I was going to die next week, if I knew I was going to die tonight, whatever I'm holding on to, whatever I have animosity about, whatever I, have, would I be focusing on that right now? If I know, I would. But because I don't think I'm going to die tonight, or next week, or next month, or next year, or at least for the next 10 years, or before age 99, unless I just decide to relinquish life. And that's an accomplishment. That's one really has control over their own lives. I remember digging the Kai number 16, a couple of numbers in my head. Digging the Kai number 16. And actually, if you could look it up, you can even, I know the Kai was. So, this mind that makes us afraid of what other people share. We can't listen and choose for ourselves. We're like, oh, I did it myself when I left church. I held up the sign of the cross when somebody tried to give me a Buddhist book. I didn't like the cover. The cover was not familiar. Didn't have symbols that I understood. So, that's demonic. I don't have anything to do with it. And I rejected it. I went to something a little closer to what I was already in. I went to unity. And then I hit a glass ceiling really quick with unity. I went to unity. Then that same thing. And then I went, and I could just roll down the list of traditions, and I couldn't find anything. 15 years later, wasted 15 years. And the first thing I get, so my master said, when you get back to the United States, go find it. Monastery, and stay there. Okay, so when I got back, I started looking. I couldn't find any where they spoke English. So I did the next best thing. I went to a Tibetan. And that's where I began my training. Lam Rim, Chan Mo, the stages of the path. And it had too much stuff in it for me. Too much. I was like, I liked it in the beginning because in my other tradition, I had one God, and here they had lots of gods, so just the more the merrier. But in time, it seemed like there was a focus in a way that wasn't grounding me in the way that I felt I needed to be grounded. I didn't know what it was, couldn't put my finger on it. It was just more than what I'd had before, perhaps. And it looked like there was a lot of worship going out to all of these gods and so forth. And I walked out the door one day and I saw a Theravada monk that came up. And it looked like his feet were not even touching the ground. He had this red robe on, not this color, but more like our red cushions back then. It's the reddest I have ever seen. I don't know where he got that robe from. And look, and it was flapping in the wind. And so it looks like he's approaching me in slow motion, gliding up the street, and he goes into his monk bag as he sees me, and he passes a book to me. And it was and he said, if you want to talk about it, it's my number. And that was Venerable Pioneer Local. I was originally of the Pioneer name. And when I began to read the book, suddenly I felt rich beyond measure. I felt that my feet went deep into the earth and my body projected into the heavens, and heaven and earth. When I read of the capacity that one could enter into, that they didn't just take reliance on somebody else, but they took reliance in a path that leaded to mastery, self-mastery. And that had been my great cry when I left the tradition of the Buddha. Where is the path to self-mastery? And so I contacted him, and I changed. And over these last 20 years, I have to say, I've gotten a good education in what the Buddha taught. I've gotten a good education. And knowing the Dharma and the discipline. But I began to be concerned maybe 10 years ago because I didn't see that many that were truly accomplished, beyond being greatly accomplished in being able to tell you what the Buddha taught. But in having this capacity to live out the level of virtue, concentration, and wisdom that he said was available if you walk this path correctly. I didn't see it. I still don't see it. And some folks are upset with me because I say it, even though they don't see it. But we have formed something now. We have formed a religion. We have formed an institutional something that has its images, that has its robes and its dress, and that has its rituals and traditions. Even in the West, we have our own rituals and traditions around mindfulness. Actually, mindfulness is scratch out Dharma and just put mindfulness. We're not going too far into Dharma. That means like I have to change. I'm just trying to be happy with my things. I'm trying to have enough focus that I can win. I'm trying to be able to settle my mind so that I won't feel guilty and don't have to change at the same time. And I like the way this calm makes me feel so much. I have to figure out how to make this into an occupation that can allow me to have the same comforts and lifestyle that I had when I was really interested in more secular things. So we all have our rituals and our traditions and our symbols and our dress. and we can speak good Dharma. But a fundamental capacity that was apparent in all that we have called holy beings throughout centuries is MIA. And about 15 years ago, I encountered a master. Well, actually, in this life, I've had 4 masters. And I don't call a person a master unless they have mastered something beyond what is common, what is ordinary. Unless they're operating in a mind that breaks yokes of bondage in the lives of those that they speak to, because the word of truth is so sharp and piercing that it can break every fetter. I don't call them masters if they have ordinary capacities and abilities like the rest of us. If you don't have any more than I have, that's common. I got all the common stuff I want. I'm looking for that which is uncommon. Because the Buddha talked about it all the time. He talked about this Dharma that was uncommon. And the difference between those who master versus the ordinary, he said, untaught, run-of-the-mill. That's not a denigration. That's just so that you know when you're making progress. Because you don't have to like think it in your head and proclaim it to others. It becomes apparent. Apparent to you inwardly, in your thoughts, apparent to others in your speech and in your conduct. Now, it doesn't mean that you always win at everything. But it does mean that there's nothing that comes up in your day that you can't do, that you can't accommodate. Because little by little, scales are falling from your eyes and you understand the nature of reality, the nature of all things, empty yet not empty. So when one of his disciples started teaching the emptiness doctrine, he sent for him. He said, when did I ever say that? Of course he did say that. But if you only give somebody half the pie, then they're gonna walk away with a misunderstanding that can be crucial. So he said, yes, empty. And also not. So you know, an emptiness doctrine sounds higher, doesn't it? That sounds like, whoa, dude, that's like way, as Saddam would say, high down. You know, so we like to talk emptiness, talk. But whether one can live emptiness, lifestyle is another thing. And so we grasp around different aspects of things that the Buddha shared. But there's only one way. There's only one. We talk about the many doors and many gates, but all gates have the same combination lock. Yeah, you can go in any one of them. They all have the same combination lock. The first number is the number of virtue. The second number is the number of concentration. The third number is the number of wisdom. And to whatever degree you operate in that, really in a living way, determines how much entry you make into the Royal Highway. So when I met this teacher, actually, I felt that there was too much emphasis on supernatural than supernormal. And mostly the Theravada in the way we receive it 2,500 years later, been translated, transliterated, and translated in line with the mentalities of the translators. And if your elevator only goes up to the 10th floor of a 50-story building, then the way you explain everything is only going to be on the 10th floor level. Sometimes language will change. I remember having an old Bible and a new Bible. And it spoke of when he who is in the world leaves the world, then certain things will happen. But they use the word let, L-E-T. And let means like to allow, right? But in the old days, originally, that meant to hinder. You hinder and allow are what?
Opposites.
Yeah. So in the old version, when you read that scripture, it was speaking of when he who hinders is taken out of the world, speaking of the evil one, in certain things. But in the last 100 years, it means allow. He who allows, and that's speaking of the Holy Spirit. Okay? And so everything can't be based on a scholar's interpretation. That's why the Buddha said you have to have a direct, D-I-R-E-C-T, experience of this. And when you have that, then you know it's right. And sometimes the conditions have to be right. You know? The second time that the Dharma came around, for me 15 years later, after that first time, and they handed me that book, and I felt silent. Second time, I received that book because over those years, my mind had opened up. I had discovered something, and it was really out of necessity. Because in my t-shirt wearing days, when I would say, I'm not perfect, I'm just forgiven. How about you? You know, when I was thinking in that way, I felt secure. But when I came of age, and I realized that more was available to me, then that t-shirt went in the dumpster. I stopped saying such things, and I stopped thinking in that way, because I had reached as far as reliance on another, you know. So 15 years later, it comes around again and I'm ready. And I like have a voracious appetite because you're talking about a dark night of the soul. I've been in the wilderness for a long time, just touching this, that sounds good, trying that, oh, it works a little bit. But again, I kept hearing, that's not it, that's not it. There's something more. And people would say the same thing. It's nothing else. We can change the words. We don't have to call it spirit. We can call it vibration. We don't have to call it vibration. We can call it, and just changing around. Exalted capacity and power was not there. I would be out there on the circuit with everybody else. All of us knew Ryder. But boy, we could give a good talk in front of an audience, especially a big one. I'm not so good with 10 people. They put me in front of 1,000 people and the sister's on a roll. Because, really, it's really. And for a long time, I couldn't even really do a one-on-one with a person. Because I wade out in the water, that water would bore you, carry, that's the energy of all the people. I knew how to tap it and I could go with it. So small has been a great challenge. But it's the work that I have done. And so I thought that maybe there was too much emphasis on, well, we don't even have the word accomplishment, in our, I don't think that word is in there anywhere, because it really doesn't. Well, it talks about finishing the course, yeah. But the Buddhist disciples were accomplished, and it was evident in their walk. And I'm looking for that. But you get caught up in what there is. It was so hard. It was so hard. It was so hard for me to be able to ordain. There were only, at the time I ordained, I think there were 13 or maybe even less than that. No, I think there were maybe 5 or 7, less than 1. And Martin Luther Wagner had actually ordained only monk in the United States. That was willing to do it. And outside of the United States in Theravada, they didn't have it at all. So it was a very dry time for women who had the earnest desire to go the distance. And then when I switched from Mahayana, which they do have none, it's just the Theravada and the Tibetan. Now I think Tibetans have 10 preceptors. And it was reestablished for the Theravada sort of unofficially in Sri Lanka. And they're still going through a lot with the Sri Lankan movement. And forget it, in Burma and Thailand, the Philippines and Cambodia, and a few elite groups in the United States. That few others were good enough for us. They were so concerned that everything on the outside is covered, so that they would be accepted. And in my conversations with them, I thought, no, everything on the inside is so that we know we are accepted by the Dharma, not the patriarchy. And we couldn't get on the same page. So I went my way. We were cordial to one another, but we just hold everything moving. And the monks would say, don't worry about it, honey, why? You just keep going. And I did. And I grew strong. And I learned how to rely on the Dharma. First, the Dharma that was written as it was written. And then, as I began to have inner experience with that Dharma, and I began to understand its subtle purposes. And now, after 15 years, I think, at least close to between 15 and 20 years, I don't quite remember the first year that I encountered. I've come to a place where the conditions are right. Truly be able to learn from my master. I've done all the things I needed to do. And not that those things aren't without merit, because they're not. I would help the sister helping me tie to become monks. And after 50, I stopped. I said, I'm never doing it in America because I won't be able to get enough sisters to join with me to even form a quorum so we can have quorums. But now I have. And we have a quorum. We need 5. To get all the monks into getting 5 nuns again. It's very difficult. Almost 2 decades. That's done. I'm through. Or I may not be through with it, but there's nothing that I want to accomplish. All done. And as my time gets short, what I'm interested now is not just bringing people onto the path, but taking those who are on the path, or whose karma is right to enter the path, to take us closer to you know, if you're going to teach 1st grade or 5th grade or 12th grade, you have to have the same basic credentials. And when I thought I wanted to teach 12th grade, my teacher said to me, you need to forget about that. You need to forget about the series. I said, that's all I want, series. He said, you need to forget about the series and focus on the periods. And I've done that for over 20 years. But now, my master has said, the karma and the conditions are right. And he's asked me to open a Vajrayana college or academy so people can learn now and be liberated in this very life. But it's going to take more than what they have available. In many teachings we know in our tradition that called the secret teaching. And they talked to the Buddha, he said, I have not differentiated between exoteric and esoteric. I have taught with an open hand. And we're gonna go into a study on this. Starting the week after next. He said, I've taught with an open hand. So he said, I made no distinction between exoteric and esoteric in teaching. I taught with an open hand. The first thing that says, for those who say there's no such thing as esoteric teaching, you don't know your Dharma. It's just that he taught them alongside each other. To everybody, no. But to the one that the karma was right, and the conditions were right, the right time for the right purpose, yes. And so we're gonna do a study as we transition into this. In the Digha Nikaya, Sutta number 16. We have about 2 weeks to look it up and read it. It's a long sutta. I mean, it's long. It's way long. Every sutta in the Digha Nikaya is long. That's what it's the long discourses. Not the Majjhima. Majjhima means middle name. Not the. These are the long. I think I used, I don't know, half a ream of paper, printing it out. But the reason why I want to take you through it, which I never have, mostly because it's long, and most people want what they can get in a Dharma talk. And it's gonna take some time to go through this one sutta. But because it completely uproots all the arguments that the Mahayanas have, why their path is superior to the Theravadas, and that the Theravadas have why their path is, their teaching is superior to the Mahayana. And it negates all the Buddha never said that, or the Buddha never did any of that the Mahayanas and the Vajrayanas did. It actually just destroys all of those lines of division with one. Has had a well-rounded experience in all the traditions. And it shows in that one sutta, number 16, in the Digha Nikaya, that he taught both the exoteric and the esoteric to one according to their. And that accomplishment was part of the achievement of walking this way. Not just to know something, but to quote, believe something, but to inherit the promise in the practice. So I want to close out saying that almost everybody has detected that something is shifting. And we did open the Sangha back up. But a week later, we were compromised, and someone who had been around us came down with COVID. The week, what is it, the week we opened back up? And so we had to turn right around and close again and quarantine, because we wanted to make sure when we opened it up for the summer that we weren't putting anybody in danger. And I said we'd be closed for another 30 days, and that was last month. And we've gone almost another 30 days. And because I knew this shift was coming, I wasn't in a hurry to open. but we are going to just keep making sure that we get the letter out. And I needed some time to really think of how I can meet the needs of those who begin a Dharma path and those who have some accomplishment. And then Sukha joined us. I'm sorry, I'm out in Sukha. And Sukha said, you know, all of this stuff, it's like that I've never heard before in this life, but it's like I heard it before. It's like I know it, I've just forgotten. And she was in a class yesterday, and it was over the top, talking about accomplishments. And it didn't frighten her. She didn't have to try to grasp hold to something that she already knows and cleave to it. She didn't reject. She was just open and says, well, you know, there's something life-giving in this teaching that I am open to. One of the main things that we will talk about is poverty mentality. And I don't mean just around money. I'm talking about a poverty mentality, period, versus a joyful path of good fortune. Learning how to live and see life in a certain way. And that's why some of us who follow a particular tradition are so serious and sad, and also anxiety. While others seem happy and joyous, but according to us, they're really.
It's like that.
Yeah.
Happily delivered.
And they are on me, I want you to know. Those are my outer traditions. I asked Buddha Master, well, how about I just go back to and put on my Chinese clothes and then everybody will be okay with me. Just no one to disturb me. And I felt like I was suffering. But I have abandoned that thought. So as long as, we'd always say that anyone can live. Doesn't have to be Theravada, doesn't matter if they're Mahayana, doesn't matter if they're Vajrayana, doesn't matter if they're not Buddhists. If they're following the true path living life. It all depends on what we do with our mind. And we can acquire that skill. The first thing is we know that we are not the mind because we watch the mind. And the tricks and the games that it plays. And how then I desire to go left, the mind tells me to go right. And because the mind's usually been in control, I go right. That should be a clue to me if you're not mind. It's also apparent to us that although we speak a lot about non-self or no self, that there also is a self. I don't care what you call it, or if you don't call it anything. But there is something there that's undeniable. And to try to make people think that there is nothing there is they just don't understand. It sounds high and esoteric and but you have a hard time convincing people that, you have a hard time convincing me I'm not talking to you. That's all I'm saying. If you haven't explained that to me in a certain way, you can't talk to me about anything. And then tell me I don't understand. But it's when you take anything and concretize and lock it down to only this that we lose the true understanding. Because in this realm, everything is relative. You can only know hot to the degree you know cold. Is what I'm saying. So do not acquire the skill of directing the mind. The mind will be unruly. You want to go right, you go left. If you acquire the skill, and that's where we're turning our focus. The skill, the power, the true training, mind. So with our thoughts, our speech, our action, and deed, and that we tread the path of virtue, concentration, and wisdom that absolutely changes the structure of things for us and allow us to live a life of riches in a way that we can truly support people. We truly have the or can you offer here? It has to also be with someone who receives it, right? You can't, they just can't offer. It has to be an offering, and it has to be received. But it means you can offer, and the offer can be intact. Because one has seen and one has attained for themselves. So if you would copy or bookmark it, if you can work on reading with the way that I have to put number 16 together for you, I'll have to take verse 46 and remind us about verse 2. That's why, I'm asking you if you can print it out. It would be most useful for you in connecting the dots. Because all instruction is not linear. Sometimes it's more like a seesaw. You go around and around. First you paint all the blue sections. Then you go and put in the yellow section. Then you put in the pink section. Then you put in the black section. And now something's taking shape. Something's taking shape. And you just keep on until you fill in all the colors. It's like paint by the numbers. And then you see. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it. I apologize because my conversation today, I really had a Dharma talk prepared. And this wasn't it. This wasn't it. And every time I tried to get into it, I could not. So this is what we need to do. We don't have to teach them, how comfortable we are going. We are going to do it. We feel comfortable. We're going to see. It's really getting ready. I don't know who's online. Am I off?
I'm not ending it now.
No, it's definitely.
I haven't talked to you.
Okay. So I don't know who's online, but if you ask me to be able to receive the Supreme and Unsurpassable Muhammad of Liberation, and you have not received it yet, would you send me an email on yahoo.com, right? My name, Panwadi2@yahoo.com. Because I am gonna take care of that on Monday. And I think there are a good number, like about 40, that I have not activated yet. If you don't know what the Muhammad of Liberation is, then don't worry, I'm not talking to you right now. But there's something else I have for a more general, broad offering coming up. But, thank you.